What's the matter, Buddymeister?
I'm pissed.
You know what? Maybe it will help if you just let out your feelings.
You think? I don't know, I'm just not drunk enough to do that.
Not drunk enough? How about just trying? Come on. All the stuff that's bottled up inside of you, let it out.
Fine.
What?
I hate this f***ing guy. Every time he tells me what the f*** I have to do and how I'm responsible for all this f***ing stuff, I can't take it. I don't know what to do.
You done? Great idea, Bottlemeister.
என்னடா எலவு வாழ்க்கணும் மேல பார்த்தா அங்க ஒரு தேன் கூடு இருந்தா அந்த தேன் கூட்டுல இருந்து ஒரே ஒரு துளி தேன் நழுவி ஒளிய வாய்ப்பக்கத்துல வந்து விழுந்தா மேல மரணம் கீழே சாவு அங்கே இருந்தாலும் அழிவது எல்லா பக்கமும் முடி நிச்சயம் தெரிஞ்சதுக்கு அப்புறமாவும்
Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage.
And I'm Deniz, the Buddymeister.
Today we're talking about the recently released Tamil language movie Super Deluxe, which we had a chance to see on the big screen here in Vienna a few days ago.
Super Deluxe stars Vijay Sethupathi, Fahad Fazil, Samantha Akineni and Ramya Krishnan. It was directed by Thiagarajan Kumararaja and it is only his second movie as a director after his debut with Aranya Khandam in 2011.
He also wrote a movie, but altogether and including him, 4 people were working on the screenplay, which makes sense in a way because the movie's plot consists of 4 different stories that are intermingled, which unfortunately turned out to be a big problem.
Yes, but let's break down everything first. In a nutshell, Super Deluxe is about an unfaithful newlywed wife, an estranged father, a priest, and an angry son who suddenly find themselves in the most unexpected predicaments, each poised to experience their destiny all on one fateful day.
The movie begins with the story of the newlywed wife Wambu, played by Samantha, who is cheating on her husband Mugil, played by Fahad Fazil. In the first scene, the camera moves into the house where this happens and slowly circles around the room to let the audience take in the whole situation. It is a classic intro into a movie that wants to open up a world for you, wants you to have a look inside a microcosm of events.
Absolutely, and as soon as the camera stops, at that point we see Samantha's back as she's sitting on another man. The real event happens. The man suddenly dies and she has to deal with the situation now. Some loose and jazzy music starts to play as she tries to cope with the circumstances, and of course, in that same moment her husband Mugil comes back.
The introductions to all of the 4 stories are pretty good. The one with the boys, for example, they go out trying to get porn from the video store, a very funny scene, and as they begin watching the movie, one of them finds out that the leading star in the movie is his mother, and all hell breaks loose. The whole sequence has strong shades of coming-of-age stuff, and it's visually captivating, and it's raunchy and funny, and they seem to have a nice banter. There's also this Kill Bill poster hanging on the wall of the video store that lets you know that the director is probably a big admirer of Tarantino and his style of filmmaking, which is very apparent throughout the whole film.
Another storyline is the one with Vijay Sethupathi's character Manikam/Shilpa, a father who returns home to his family as a woman. That moment when he steps out of the car and is actually a she is pretty remarkable.
For me, even more so was the whole build-up of that scene. We spent quite some time in this household. Not only is it very interesting from a visual perspective, with the way the home is arranged and how we move through it, but there's also this little boy who's so anxious to meet his father again.
You're right, the child actor is absolutely fantastic and extremely charismatic. You might say he totally steals all the scenes he's in.
The last of the 4 stories and probably the most demanding introduction surrounds the character of Apurtam, who, because he was the lone survivor in a tsunami, is a strong devotee of God. We don't get to see him in that first scene, we only hear from him through his, let's call him, spiritual assistant. It's a long scene, but at that point the stage is set for an intriguing narrative.
All those stories can be subdivided into more stories, but the focus lies on the struggles that the characters are going through because of who they are, who they've become, or what they have done, and the things that came from it.
Exactly. Now, the first thing that caught my eye in Super Deluxe was the color palette. We get very saturated colors, strong colors, green, yellow, blue, red, brown, very expressionistic, but almost a bit too much for me, because while intriguing at first, with time it felt too unnatural to me. I appreciated the attempt, but maybe less would have been more, or a more poignant use of it would have been better.
It reminded me of Richard Linklater's Scanner Darkly, where they used the interpolated rotoscope technique to get this mix of live action and animation.
Well, that's quite a leap, but I think I see what you mean. But now let's tackle the big problem with the 4 stories that we hinted at earlier. 4 stories, 4 screenwriters, and on top of that, apparently the different writers didn't really know too much about the other writers' stories. They only knew the broad overall narrative, which is an interesting approach, but also a risky one.
Super Deluxe tries to tell me an engaging plot where 4 different stories touch on each other at some point, be it by chance or fate or whatever, and so it's supposed to be a big overarching narrative, but to me, it really felt like 4 movies that didn't work together well. Now, that could have different reasons. Either the screenplay situation, the directing, the editing.
It's probably a bit of everything. Super Deluxe is very ambitious, it tries to do a lot, tries to tackle big themes, and it succeeds at some points. We don't want to take anything away from it. Ambitious is the word here. But I have to agree with you when it comes to the 4 movies. There is no proper link that wanted me to know how all of this turns out and how it is all connected. Now don't get me wrong, maybe they intended to make 4 movies in one, with those aforementioned touching points. That probably was the intended purpose, but in that case, or rather in any case, any of those 4 movies needs to be intriguing, captivating, interesting, and in my mind Super Deluxe just didn't deliver on that. Films like Pulp Fiction or Magnolia came to mind, and oftentimes Super Deluxe feels like an Indian version of it. Sometimes it works really well and the style is carrying you through the movie, but it also often loses its grip on the audience, or at least on me, because the tonal shifts, the way scenes play out, and some story decisions didn't work for me.
Very well put. If you take the characters, for example, I think we have very little that connects us to them, that makes us care enough about them. I mean, it's not like I don't care at all. I think some of the problems or situations are universal and can be synonymous for other problems that I have in my life, for example. But not one of all those characters is really fleshed out. Take Mugil or Vembu, for example. The only thing we know about Mugil is that he's an actor and that he needs to be drunk to be able to let out his emotions. And what do we really know about Vembu?
I'm not sure if the actual characters were that big of a problem for me. The film has a very heightened, almost pulpy flair with some very extreme moments, and I thought Fahad Fazil and Samantha were pretty fantastic together. Their characters form this totally unpredictable, crazy, and sometimes almost sinister odd couple, and I liked it a lot. Up until a certain point, but we will get to that later.
I don't know, for me it wasn't enough. What about the other characters?
Well, Vijay Setupati's Shilpa used to be a man, but is a woman now, and she's very shy. Apurtam believes in God because he's a lone survivor of a tsunami, and he's very rigorous. And Suri, the boy who sees his mother in a porn, is, well, angry. The other boys are oftentimes just strange.
I think if it is that hard to come up with attributes that describe the characters, it probably means that they just aren't written that well.
I don't fully agree with that. I mean, I would give you the boys, but with them it's more about the momentum, I guess. Though it's certainly a problem later on that we don't really care that much for them. And that's a shame, because after that introduction, I thought they would be one of the movie's highlights. But for a movie that runs for 176 minutes, most characters don't develop enough personality to really carry the film. Can we agree on that?
Absolutely. The movie is definitely too long, and it's not just the characters, it's also the situations and the scenes. Super Deluxe is a very crass mix of genres and tones, and yet it feels kind of repetitive. I thought the second half was weaker than the first, because the movie really began to stress me out. There was a lot of potential, scenes that could have been really great, but too often they are stretched out way too long.
That was a problem that I had as well. 2 major scenes come to mind here. 2 scenes that are very similar, and I wondered why we had to go through almost the exact motions twice. Without spoiling too much, both those scenes revolve around the threat of being raped, and both of them are dragged out a lot. The first one reminded me a little bit of that moment with Marcellus Wallace, Butch and that pervert in Pulp Fiction. But that one was done masterfully, and in Super Deluxe the effect they are aiming for is too apparent. There's this evil police officer and he's just the devil himself. And the movie has this dark brooding music that's playing over the scene from beginning to end. Unfortunately, the scene, or rather both those scenes, had the opposite effect on me. I lost interest and was really annoyed, to be honest. This was also a big letdown because, like I said, I really dug the chemistry and banter between Mugil and Wembu. And I thought once we got to that second scene, it got wasted and their characters didn't go any place further or any place interesting.
Yeah, and the second one suffers from overreaching, or simply put from wanting too much, even more. For one, because we already went through a similar scene, but also because it's even longer and we jump to other stories in between.
You know, that actually could have worked, but more than once the rhythm and pace of the respective scene and the other storyline is completely different. We are supposed to feel the terror of the scene with that police officer, but then we jump to an almost funny and easygoing scene with the boys, or a heartfelt moment between Shilpa and her son. I guess the movie tried to open up this kaleidoscope of different fragments of life and the craziness that all those things can happen or are happening simultaneously, but from an emotional standpoint, it wasn't working for me. Films like Requiem for a Dream or the already mentioned Magnolia are able to pull at your heartstrings by combining different side stories and characters, cutting back and forth, letting the music overlap and slowly but continuously increasing the tension and the dramatic effect.
I think the comparison to films like Magnolia or Pulp Fiction is very accurate, and although the movie was stressing me out, I still valued its ambition to do something in that vein. But unfortunately, Super Deluxe lacks the intensity, the momentum of these movies. It never reaches those heights.
Yeah, totally. But I think we start to repeat ourselves here. It's also very likely that people who are versed in the history of Tamil cinema will get a lot more out of it, because I'm certain there are probably many references to be found in and to have fun with.
Definitely.
But before we end this review, I do have to address the elephant in the room, and I can't do that without a spoiler warning. So you have been warned.
I think I know where you are going.
Well, when we say the film is ambitious, we really mean it, because not only is it telling those different stories and going all out with it, it's also including aliens.
Yes, it is. And I know you saw it coming.
I totally did, which was really funny, because the only reason why I did see it coming was because we just saw the Malayalam movie Lucifer recently and we got dozens of comments that we missed all the Illuminati references in that film. So this time I told you that I will pay close attention to other possible layers. And when one of the boys was watching some alien stuff on TV and when there were posters of James Cameron's Aliens in the background, what did I tell you?
That there will be aliens in this, and you were right. But more important, what did you think about it?
I wasn't the biggest fan. On one hand, I thought it was cool to include a sci-fi element as well, and somehow it must be connected to the overall theme in the film, which to be honest is not that easy to grasp, but on the other hand it's a bit lacklusterly integrated because it doesn't seem to have that big of an impact on anything. One of the boys gets cloned and yet it's no big deal. Again, this element, this heavy departure from what you expect, reminded me of Magnolia, because in that film's climax there's this supernatural event as well, but the difference for me is that in Magnolia it feels like this big, unexpected, sudden relief, this big cathartic moment that connects all storylines. And I don't say Super Deluxe has to do the exact same thing, but I couldn't help but feel a bit underwhelmed by what should have been this big moment.
Yeah, I think we really wanted to like the movie a lot more, but it simply didn't click. And we hope that you can understand our reasons.
So, in German we'd say,
Super Deluxe ist ein ambitionierter Film, der an seinen eigenen Ansprüchen scheitert. Schuld daran sind mitunter der teilweise schwache Szenenaufbau, die flachen Charaktere sowie das allgemein schwächelnde Drehbuch. Trotzdem ist er unterhaltsam und wird mit Sicherheit sein Publikum finden.
I give Super Deluxe 6 out of 10. It's more like 5.8, but I don't do that.
For me, it's 5 out of 10. It's more like 5.3, but I don't do that either.
அகாண்டு சொன்னா
So that's it for today and our review of Super Deluxe. So how about some movie recommendations for a change?
Yeah, why not? Tell us what are the best Indian movies with multiple characters and intertwining stories.
Good one.
Thanks.
Until then, you can hit me up on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram simply at The Jimmy Cage.
And you can hit me up at the Buddymeister.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all we have to tell.